Hello and welcome, my name is Sarah and I create multi-tutorials for The Sims 4. In today's video we're gonna go over notifications. Now I've got quite a few requests on those because I know they can seem quite intimidating while using the TDES builder. Also, I want to say that the weather is crazy today, so if you hear a lot of rain in the background, I am sorry for that. I cannot control the weather. Anyways, let's just dive into it. So in front of me, I have opened the TDES builder. If you're unfamiliar with this program, I have a tutorial about the TDES builder. I will pop it up in the right corner so you can watch it now or later. So most of the time when we are creating a notification, we are using a loot action. So 9 out of 10 times you would actually have your interaction and then go from your interaction into a loot, and then into that loot there will be the notification. Now you could easily find it by just going and click on here where it says none and then just type in notification, and then it is the notification and dialogue. Before we dive into this, I also want to say that you can actually add notifications into interactions, and you can add those into the basic extras. So sometimes you just want to work with less files, and then you can just create a notification inside of basic extras. So you just go to the basic extras and then type in notifications, and then here we have the notification, everything we can add to this notification. However, the basic extras I actually rarely use, and I don't really recommend it unless it makes sense for your interaction. But what you could do is you could go into outcome, so that is what happens after an interaction, so the outcome of an interaction. Then with anything you choose over here, I'm going for single right now. You can also go here into basic extras and then type in notifications. So if a interaction is happening and you only want a notification at the end, you can just add it in here in basic extras, and you will just use less files inside of your mod. So I like to use this too if a loot isn't necessary. So for example, if I don't want to give my sim money or have relationship changes or give my sim a buff or anything like that, and I only want a notification after a interaction, then I just put the notification inside of the basic extras inside of outcome. And then yes, you can give a different kind of notifications with the different kind of outcomes. So if we're looking at this test based, we have a basic extras over here, so we could again do notification for the fallback outcome. And then you could give a different kind of notification inside the prioritized one. If you are familiar with outcomes, I also have a full video about that, and we'll pop it up in the right corner as well. So it all just depends on what you're trying to create, as in where you want to put your notification. Now the easiest way is always just put it inside of a loot, because it's easier to find back and easier to edit. Now you should know how to add a loot inside of an outcome, but if you don't, there is a loot list over here, and then you can just find it over here, and then that is the loot that you're trying to create over there. So now let's have a look at notifications. Now if you are selecting notification from here, you will have these different options that you see over here. Now chances work with, if we change this to 50, then there's just like a 50% chance our sim will receive this notification. If we set this back to 100, it's a 100% chance our sim will receive this notification. If we are unselecting this, there is always a 100% chance for a sim to receive a notification. If you're unfamiliar with chances and multipliers, I also have a video about tests and multipliers, which I will also pop up in the top right corner. Now to change the text of the notification, to change the icon of the notification, to do anything with a notification, we can find that here in dialog. Now I leave this as notifications, and I have to be honest, I actually never used any of the other options, but they are different options you can use, and you can definitely play around with it and have a look what each of them do. Now for a notification, this list looks extremely long, and I understand it could be quite overwhelming, but the main things that you will actually be using are none of these over here. We have icons. That is definitely something you'll be using. So this will give the main icon, which is always like on the left of the notification. So this could be anything really. It could also be a sim. Now, if you're talking to a different sim, instead of resort key, which will let us pick any of the icons from the game, so instead of choosing this we can then choose participant, and then we could set it to actor, for example. So this is then the sim that is given the outcome. Their face will now pop up in the corner and not just a image. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Now, if we scroll a little bit further down, we also get a secondary icon. And now this is actually a fun icon, because this is the icon that pops up underneath all the text. So the main icon is in the left corner, and then the secondary icon is underneath the text. Now, most of the time when I use this, I set this one to participant, and just if you leave it like this, it will always be the actor. But we could also change this to, let's say, a target sim. And then for the text of the notification, it is just this one that says text. So that is the text of the notification. And then we also have the option to select title, which is then the title of the notification. And these are actually just the main things that you'll be using when creating a notification. And you can definitely play around with the other options, but if you just want a basic notification, this is what you'll be using. Now let's make it a little bit more complicated. I have created 3 different options over here. So looking at the first one, we have a notification and dialog notification. Then we have a icon. Then if we look further down, we have a secondary icon, which is just of the actors. Then we have text. Now for this text, I did something funny. I went 0.sim first name viewed the 1.object name. Now this is where things get a little bit more complicated, but also makes a notification a lot more personal. So for this, I'm using the text token. Now text tokens are things to refer to for the 0 and the 1s and the 2s and the 3s. I hope that makes sense. Inside of these text tokens, we have 2 different ones. We have a participant type, which is this one, and then we have a definition, which is this one. Now definition is a object in this case, so the definition of a object. So the game will look at the object itself and will see the object's name, the object's description, the object's subtext, whatever you have added into that object. Now the important thing about text tokens is that you will always need to make sure you have your things that you are referring to in order. So in this case, I have an object name, and I also have the sim first name. And then over here in text tokens, we have this 1 over here and 2. Now these actually count as 0 and 1. Anything I've put into the 0 dot and then behind it will be looked at to this one, which just says participant type, which will be the actor. Now if it's a bit confusing, you can always just go and make sure to also select this one, so we have a better overview of it. but because it always looks at the actor first, you don't actually need to select this, but it's actually just better to do if you are unfamiliar with how this all works and you're just trying to figure out how it works. It is always good to just select everything. And then for the one dot, I have object name, and then I have a definition to this object over here, which is an object I've created for my Road to Wealth mod, and it is a bus membership. So the name of this object is also bus membership. So in this case, this text will say our Sim's first name. So let's say our Sim's name is Sarah. So it'll be Sarah viewed the bus membership. That is what the text of the notification will say. Now, I hope this makes sense. It could be quite confusing, but I feel like once you start playing around with the zeros and the ones, you will get used to it and start to understand how this actually works, those text tokens. So to mention it one more time, this participant type over here is all number 0, and then the definition is number 1. And then over here in the title, I have set one.object name, which will also look at this definition. So it will just say bus membership. So I hope that makes sense. Moving on to the second one, I have done something similar over here. This is a shorter notification, and this one says, "Thank you, Sim's name, for the compliment." So in this case, this notification happens after two Sims have a conversation with each other, and then this is the end result. Now, the target Sim is the Sim our Sim was talking to. So in this case, we get the icon of the Sim we were talking to as icon because it's enabled icon as a participant target Sim. And then for the text, I wrote down thank you, and then Sim first name. And then for the text token, we have the participant type again, and then the actor. So the actor means the Sim who did the interaction. And then we also have something new, which is visual type speech. Now, we don't always have to say what kind of visual type it is because it's always set to information, which is just the blue standard notification. So we don't actually have to select this for a standard notification. But if we want to make it look like the main icon of the notification is talking, we would set this to visual type speech. So I hope this video was helpful. If you have any more questions about notifications, then please feel free to ask those in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel for more Sims 4 content, and I'll see you in the next video.